entrepreneurship is not a kind road to the body and the mind and the spirit.
My health crashed big time at the age of 42. And Western medicine told me it was all in my head, and I knew it wasn't. So I had to do a serious deep dive to understand and heal my body. I didn't even understand biohacking really until 2012, 10 years later, when I read Bruce Lipton's book called The Biology of Belief, understanding that even our beliefs impact us on a DNA level, on a cellular level, and that our thoughts can change the behavior of our genes.
Welcome to Unreasonable Autonomy. My name is Sarah Grace. This is the podcast for entrepreneurs and innovators who refuse to settle. Here we dive deep into raw, real conversations with boundary pushers who have pursued seemingly impossible ideas and yet have achieved unreasonable results, whether that's in their faith, relationships, health, politics, yes, even business. All of those conversations are happening right here, right now. So let's buckle up because this isn't about playing it safe. Unreasonable ideas, unstoppable results. Let's go.
Lori is a retired nurse practitioner and clinical nurse specialist with over 40 years of experience in women's health and functional medicine. She is the award-winning, best-selling author of Create the Vitality You Crave, Epigenetics 101 to Unlock Your Healing Power, and its companion workbook. After overcoming severe hormonal chaos and chronic fatigue at the age of 42, through epigenetics and targeted biohacking, she now teaches women how to understand their genetic blueprint, balance hormones, and restore energy and vitality. Her upcoming book, Biohack Perimenopause, offers a modern roadmap for navigating midlife with confidence and clarity. Get ready to rethink everything you thought about menopause, biohacking, hormones. This conversation is for you. Here's the conversation with the amazing Lori Finlay. You guys, welcome back to the podcast. I can't even say enough about this woman sitting across from me. When I say that someone has literally altered the trajectory of my life, I am not lying, you guys. We have the amazing Lori Finlay here with us today. Hi, Lori. Welcome.
Good morning. It's lovely to join you and your amazing listeners.
You guys, we only have like 40 minutes to talk, but I could go on for all of those 40 minutes just myself talking about the before and after of what my life has been like since you entered the picture. You guys, Lori came to me after one of the most devastating moments in my life. I was running a big time business. I had a membership. I was running on full cylinders. And then on Christmas morning of 2023, my mom passed away very unexpectedly. And my world crumbled. It absolutely crumbled. Now, I was not even in a mindset to be able to recognize I needed help, let alone ask for help. But quite literally months after my mother had passed away, I was falling apart. Everything was falling apart. My mind was falling apart. My eating was falling apart. I didn't want to get out of bed. I had debilitating depression. I was gaining weight. I was snippy with my kids and my partner. Let's just talk about the hot mess. I had ridden the Peloton for almost 4 years straight and hadn't gone on it for a single day since my mom had passed away, right? And then Lori sent me a message and said, "You're drowning. I want to help you. Jump on a call with me," right? And I get a little bit tender even just introducing you, Lori, because I didn't even know the first step that I could take to feel better, because I just thought nothing is going to be able to fix my mom being gone, right? Luckily, Jesus can fix that, right? And that's right. Maybe later in the podcast. But that conversation changed the trajectory of my life. And we will get into, sort of the magic of biohacking and how you care for people one-on-one later in the interview. But I just want I really wanted to set the stage here for our listeners about how important this conversation is going to be. Because whether or not anyone listening has lost a parent recently or experienced trauma, entrepreneurship is not a kind road to the body and the mind and the spirit. You've experienced that firsthand. I have experienced that firsthand. But there is a way to be a thriving entrepreneur and a female or a male and be able to really live a very vital, your word is vitality, a vitality filled life once you understand the world of biohacking. So in order to set the stage, you guys now know that this woman has changed my life. I'm going to turn it to you, Lori. What was it that got you into the world of biohacking, and why is that your mission now? Let's go.
Thank you. That was absolutely beautiful. And I want to stop and say, you've changed my life as well. And it's really interesting because I rarely step over the boundary and call someone and say, you need me, right? Like I'm open to people I know to contacting me. I'm very careful of that boundary, but I felt very prompted that day. It was just like, I need to reach out. She's drowning. So I'm so grateful I've made a difference. And to get back to your question about how I got into this field, I I've had over 40 years of experience in nursing, right? Started in critical care. I knew at 10 years old, I was going to work in cardiology, fell in love with it, was working in transplantation and critical care and traveling around the country and teaching and lecturing and, a cardiology nurse practitioner and on and on and on. And my father dropped dead of a massive heart attack. And it was world shattering. I was 35 years old. It was devastating. And I had a conversation with God. It was like, let me backtrack and say, I also was experiencing working at the VA, seeing patients come every 6 months, the same patients over and over every 6 months, going back in for what I call a rotor-rooter, another cath or stent or whatever procedure. And we were never getting to the root cause. I didn't know about functional medicine then. I just knew that this is a broken system. It's not working. And so when my dad died, I had this conversation with God, just so authentic and open, like, I can't do this anymore. I need to spend the rest of my life teaching people how to be well. And I created the first cardiology risk reduction clinic in the VA medical system, which was awesome. And then I got married, I moved away, I stopped working in crisis management medicine, I now call it. And then my health crashed big time at the age of 42. And I feel like it was, some days I joke about God's humor, right? It's like, this is what I want to do, teach people about wellness. Well, here's your third graduate degree, Lori. Now you can focus on learning about functional medicine and healing your own body. And I was a mess, and Western medicine told me it was all in my head, and I knew it wasn't. I knew there was something clearly wrong, going on. And it was, part of it was genetics. My mother died at the age of 25. And I have her genetics, and I've got other family members that have the same, and we've all dealt with things. So I had to do a serious deep dive to understand and heal my body. It took 15 years, but I didn't know, right? I didn't know. In Western medicine, everything is siloed, right? Not only do we have all of these ologists, right, that are not communicating with each other, but they also don't bring into account the body, mind, and spirit. And I didn't recognize that I had been grieving for so long, and didn't even know how to handle, like you with your mom, you didn't even know how to connect all the dots. I had no idea how to connect all the dots, or that they were connected, and what was going on in my physiology. I didn't know anything about, I hated biochemistry. I hated it. And yet now I had to dig in and learn it. And now I could geek out. Now I geek out in biochemistry and DNA testing and putting all the puzzles together, right? And then bringing in the missing piece that's missing in Western medicine, which is body, mind, and spirit together, right? So my journey of biohacking was, I had to heal my body. And I didn't even understand biohacking really until 2012, 10 years later, when I read Bruce Lipton's book called The Biology of Belief, and understanding that even our beliefs impact us on a DNA level and a cellular level, and that our thoughts can change the behavior of our genes, the behavior of our biochemistry, and how our cells and our bodies respond, right? Incredible. And I was studying other areas of expertise, masculine and feminine energy, and understanding more about feminine physiology, and how I had destroyed my health or exacerbated all of those DNA things in my world, we call it epigenetics, right? There's your genetic wiring and what you do to it on top of your genetics, right? Your stress, your lifestyle, your beliefs, your grief, your trauma, your childhood trauma, any abuse, your environmental conditions, the air you breathe, the water you drink, all of these things were impacting my genes, which were already struggling. I had to learn all that, right? And I had to learn how to heal. And at the same time, I've got multiple generations of entrepreneurs. And so I was pushing my body as an entrepreneur and doing it in the man's world, trained and taught by men, and exacerbating it all. And I had no idea. So I've had to come a long way to learn how to do what I'm doing and heal my body and make a difference for women. So it really is a pain to passion, story, because I want to help prevent other female entrepreneurs, prevent them from going through what I did and destroying their health in the process.
Well, I love this story so much because it's such resilience that you had this desperation. I am not feeling well. I'm 42. I'm too early for menopause. Like help me just simply feel better in the day to day. But the challenge that you were faced with was I'm brought up in the Western medicine world. I've given a lot to the Western medicine world, but the answers I'm getting are either dismissive or it's just popping pills or it's just kind of all in your head. Like, this is aging, Lori, this is what it is. And so I love your desire to be able to say, okay, these are the answers that I'm getting. That's not good enough for me, right? I mean, the name of the podcast is Unreasonable Autonomy. You got real unreasonable in that moment in which you said, I am not going to feel this or worse for the rest of my life. That is an unreasonable answer to me. And so it sounds like not only did you have to learn new things, but you had to unlearn so much of your foundation of what you had learned when it came to medicine and feeling well. So you kind of did the unlearning and the relearning, and that's what you're trying to bring to the table for so many people.
Right. I mean, it was fascinating how the colleagues that I was working with told me that even vitamin C isn't good for your health and your cardiology when Linus Pauling had received a Nobel Prize. Oh, really? Really? So yes, I had to unlearn a lot. And there was a lot of criticism, right? When you're on I may not have been the pioneering, but I was certainly an early adopter in biohacking and nutrition. And you go through a lot of criticism when you're an early adopter. And so, yes, I definitely had to unlearn. Yeah.
Oh, and I imagine every entrepreneur is like, I love someone who's a visionary and who's a pioneer, because that's what entrepreneurs are, right? They're often trying to carve this road. Now, something that you said really, really intrigued me. You talked about how you had this entrepreneurial spirit, and yet the only way that you knew how to do it was to grind it out. Right?
Yes.
To spend time, to be loud, to do all those kinds of things. And I guess I would bring in a very controversial topic, and that is what is required in order to succeed in entrepreneurship and how that works against how women function best. What has been your experience?
Oh, I'm so glad you
It's a loaded question.
Yes, I'm so glad you asked that question. First of all, again, women don't understand their own biology, right? Well, first of all, you mentioned women are, dismissed. Yes, we're gaslit and dismissed and misunderstood and misdiagnosed in Western medicine. We have been for years, and we still are. Like, we've had landmark, profound things happen this year by, the FDA reversing. Anyway, great things going on, which is exciting. And there's still a lot going on there, and a lot in the world as well of business and entrepreneurship. But what I've seen, again, women, first of all, don't understand that physiologically, men have at least 16 times more testosterone than women to produce their results. We have to rely on our adrenals. And so, like, now we're in adrenal, we're stressing our adrenals with all this cortisol. We're creating terrific hormonal imbalance, which is setting us up for profound weight gain and cholesterol and, all these cardiovascular issues, all these life issues. and metabolic, abnormalities because of the stress we put ourselves under, not to mention the huge risk of cancers and on and on and on. And we don't know how to get ourselves out of it. But women have not been, physiologically and genetically, we're designed basically to listen to our bodies. A woman needs to listen, like, what's going on with, like, I could lose my baby if I don't pay attention to this cramping. If I, you know what I mean? Like we're trained to listen to our bodies, to pay attention. But as entrepreneurs, we ignore them and we turn off the dashboard lights and we just keep going. And we don't realize that we're going to actually go a lot farther if we do the self-care, if we manage our nervous systems, if we actually do things on a level at which our nervous system is ready for it, and then train our nervous system, and I teach clients how to do this, but we train our nervous system to be able to expand the capacity for which, our hormones and our nervous system can handle what we're trying to create, right?
Okay.
So women need to women need to be a lot more focused on their physiology than they have been. Because we don't turn off as entrepreneurs. It's going, you don't clock out. It's going all the time. And so we have to be diligent to care for our body, mind, and spirit, or we'll burn out. And we are the golden goose.
Oh,
we're the golden goose in our business, right?
Yes. So I've got a follow-up question for that, because immediately I started to think, well, does that just mean that women are at a deficit in entrepreneurship? Is it actually harder for women? But what I'm hearing from you is, if women can lean into intuition and really honor their bodies, and we'll talk about how later, but if they can actually align and honor their bodies, they actually can be at an advantage, meaning they can get more done, that they can, and I don't mean more time, but I just mean their effectiveness will skyrocket, so that it's almost like they're on like a little fulcrum, where if they can figure out this end, they have a huge leverage point if they can learn to be intuitive about their body. Has that been your experience?
Yes. And the advantage of being a female entrepreneur is that we can tap into both masculine and feminine energy, both the yin and the yang. But if we don't honor our feminine energy and our feminine power, that of the intuition, right, then we're discounting that incredible power. Like, we're just not tapping into that. And I didn't understand that for years. And I was just following the bros and doing what they said. Here's how you build a business, right?
Right.
And they can't tap into feminine energy, right? Like, they depend on us for feminine energy. We are their life source. And even in the workplace, like, if you're on a committee and you're in the boardroom, like, we need to recognize, like, they need us and our intuitive skills. And we can only tap into those when we slow down and pull back.
And see, every female entrepreneur is like, slow down, pull back. They immediately, there's like an aversion to that, because it feels like I'm going to get left behind, right? Or I'm not going to be able to keep up. And so how do you mindset wise help female entrepreneurs understand that that's actually not true?
Well, first of all, I like to go over what are their unique gifts, right? What are their unique special gifts? Not just as a woman, but, me as myself, as you, Sarah, what are your specific, your gifts? And then look back and go, when are you able to express that the best? How much sleep? How much, food and hydration and exercise? When do you feel your best that these particular gifts are really expressed, right? And then look at that and go, yeah, when I'm getting 5 hours of sleep, I can't tap into that gift as well. Or when I'm, fasting for too many hours for a woman's body, or cold plunging for way too long for a woman's body, or I'm not, again, it could be eating, it could be exercise, whatever it is. When I'm not doing those things, could be sunlight, then I don't seem to be able to tap into those gifts. So I help women put those big rocks in first, right? And then if they honor their self-care and those big rocks, then whatever time they do spend in productivity is going to be so much more productive. Like they're going to tap into their it's the difference between zone of excellence and zone of genius. They can't tap into their zone of genius when they're exhausted emotionally, mentally, physically, or spiritually. It doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. And I can bring my own personal experience to try and illustrate this for our listeners. When I met with you, you had me take what's called the Dutch test, right? And we'll put links below. Every single listener here, you need to pay Lori. You need to take the Dutch test. You need to meet with her, because what it'll do is it'll actually give you data about your body, right? Gives you data about your body and gives Lori, who can like interpret it, because you're going to need an interpreter, everybody, for the test, right? It'll help her interpret like the starting point, right? Because I was not in a position to sit across from you and for you to say, here are the 25 supplements, and then here's the food you need to eat at 8 a.m. and 12 p.m. and then 3 p.m. and then 6 p.m. And then I need to make sure that you're doing cardio and you're doing there is no way that my state could have handled that kind of fire hose information, even though the Dutch test could have revealed a full plan like that, right? Right. I was shocked that after I met with Lori, and I won't get into huge specifics, but after meeting with you, you told me to do two things. One is I needed some supplements, right? Ordered those. That was pretty easy to click an order. And then the second thing is you said you have to cut back on the exercising. And I was like, wait, what? What person has ever told you, oh, you should exercise less, right? And you would not believe that with those two steps, the change specifically in energy and then TMI in libido, that improved from just those two things, right? And then you meet with Lori again and she tells you, okay, let's stack this on now. And then let's stack this on now, right? And so what would be some other, like mine was exercise less, what would be some other surprising things that female entrepreneurs might learn about how women operate differently self-care wise than men?
Well, great question. And I want to come back and discuss that. And it's not just the Dutch test. And by the way, for your male listeners, what I see on the Dutch test and what I teach women about, whether it's in my book or like impacts you hormonally, the challenges for women is that, most women are most concerned about breast cancer and hormone-related cancers. But the same pathophysiology or disease process that would put a woman at high risk for that puts a man at high risk for it as well. So whether it's their stress or their exposure to toxins or their diet, right? And then you combine their own genetics, their DNA, right? Their DNA and what's going on in their gut and test their microbiome. Like all of these things come to give a much bigger physiological picture. And all of that is wonderful. And if you don't pay attention to, the mental load and the emotional load and that burden and deal with body, mind, and spirit, then you're missing the picture. So it takes way more than hormones to balance hormones. Way more than hormones, and I've been teaching, that's why I wrote my book, right? It was like, look, for you to have vitality, it's not just about popping, and by the way, those energy drinks, they're horrible for your health, right? Like stop that, right? But the cost it's not just women, and it's not just in their work world. It's not just in their business. What they're doing in their business is impacting every area of their life. It's impacting their children. It's impacting their partner, whether they're married or not. Like it's impacting who they are in the workplace and who they're being with their team members. If they're not addressing these things and slowing down and go, okay, again, coming back to, am I proving or disproving? What hadn't I healed from my childhood that kept me pushing 70 hours a week to prove or disprove? And until I did that healing work, I wasn't paying attention and listening to my body because those emotional wounds were driving me.
Oh, my word. And I think instinctively as a human race, we want the easiest fix. which is probably why, Western medicine has been driven in the direction that it has, that there, there are medications and there are, and I am married to a doctor, and that. And so I have deep respect for both, right? And for the need for both. And so I hope that everyone in this conversation can recognize this is a balanced conversation, right? And I think that the quick fix to me, based upon what you said early, is, well, why can't we then just 16x the amount of testosterone in our bodies so that we can perform like men and crank it out and be successful and make millions and move on, right? There's got to be something beautiful about the woman that we are trying to keep intact. Talk to me a little bit about, why don't we just replace hormones? Why don't we just ramp up women's abilities to be action takers? Tell me about your philosophy with that.
Well, first of all, we could ramp up, our testosterone levels. I've been taking bioidentical hormones since I was 42. I mean, my body crashed, premature menopause at 42. I was desperate. And it's been life-changing, and I've completely healed my body. My bone health that was, osteopenic and a mess is now in the 98th percentile. Went from 2 hours in bed for 2 hours of productivity all the way to, I'm now at an excellent or superior range for a 65-year-old on, a VO2 max test, right? Completely healed my body. So I believe in bioidentical hormones. And I could take a whole bunch of testosterone to ramp it up. And then you'll throw everything else out of balance, which has its own risks. So it's got to be in balance. We've got to do it in balance. And I think more importantly, if women are not paying attention to the balance and their cycle, right? And during this week or 2 week period, just like in fasting during this week or 2 week period, then we can push harder. During this particular time, we need to calm down a bit and honor our body and our physiology, right?
Oh,
a week, as we get just right after ovulation, as our progesterone is supposed to be spiking, right? If we're fasting, that no. There's a reason we crave carbs before we ovulate, before we menstruate, right? That difference, the time between ovulation and menstruation, we're craving carbs because progesterone needs that. And we're trying, and that's a calming GABA, producing wonderful time. That would be a perfect time for us to slow down on our exercise, tune in, start journaling, have some time, have some quiet time to think about our business. And that's, I love Benjamin Hardy. I love 10X is, easier than 2X, all of these things, right? I think in many ways they reinforce for women, we need to get rid of all of those things we shouldn't be doing so we can honor, particularly as entrepreneurs, as female entrepreneurs, honor our feminine instinctive power and tap into that. And there's a particular time of the month, again, in those first 2 weeks of the cycle from day one to ovulation, you can crank out more energy, right? And we need to be aware of those things.
This is so powerful.
I hope that answered your question.
It does. And we are both such fans of Ben Hardy, right?
Yes.
And what he's brought as far as perspective and vision. And so there is deep respect there. And I actually think he is a complement to what you just said, because he has a book called Who Not How, which we are both believers in. And I want you just imagine, listeners, you go, you get all the tests that Lori tells you to get, you sit with her, and she maps out your month as far as when you are most productive, as far as when those carb cravings are necessary and when you're not fasting, whatever that may be. You may look at it and you may say, okay, so what? I just take a week off for the business here because of XYZ, or that's not when I'm jiving. No, you find the who. You plug in the gaps for the times or weeks or efforts that you're not going to be at your prime, and you find a who that fills in those gaps for you, and you will be light years ahead of competitors and of your current self, right? If you're able to marry those ideas together. Do you see that as a winning strategy for our listeners?
Yes, and I want to come back to like physiologically, once we understand what's going on in our bodies, right? And again, coming back to our unique genome, like your genetics and epigenetics, like what's going on in your body, because the labs don't lie, right? If we do the test accurately, we'll get good data and we'll be able to see like, ooh, you're pushing yourself too hard and you're going to burn out and then you're going to be wiped out and you're not available. So
Yeah.
even during those times, it may mean, okay, and I do this with clients all the time. I'll give them extra progesterone during this particular time of the month than this particular time of month when they really desperately need it. I had a client who's a mid-level executive at Adobe. She's, got an MBA. She's brilliant, a big wig, but her physiology was a mess. She could not have a team meeting for 2 weeks out of the month because her hormones were so unbalanced. We have a lot of work to do, but she just completely turned around. We got some things out of her body, i.e. the pill. I'll just share that, like what that's doing to female entrepreneurs. But, there were things we did. We got bad toxic things out and we reinforced with nutrition and lifestyle changes. And it's taken her a couple years. Within 6 months, things were profoundly different, even in 6 weeks. And as I've worked with her for a couple years, it's amazing, the profound difference in her health and her physiology. So she's going into perimenopause now in a much healthier state than 98% of perimenopausal women. And that's what I experienced. Like I had to heal my body. So as a postmenopausal woman, I'm way healthier because of what I went through.
And it's just shocking because I've seen your before and afters, age 42 compared to age 65, and it is no contest. Your life is so much better now.
Yes, so much. Absolutely. Right? So much better now.
So a follow-up question to that, when we talk about timing, right? And I imagine that for a lot of people that have maybe sort of looked over the fence at biohacking, or they've kind of peeked into hormone replacement therapy and some of these other, they may be called more alternative, views to medicine. Maybe that's what we call it right now. What would you say is a pretty solid expectation of when most people can start to feel a difference when they start entering that world of balance and hormone replacement therapy and biohacking? Like, how quickly can we honestly start to see if it works for us?
Well, I'm going to backtrack as I have so far every time. That's really fascinating is that we're seeing, and there was a study that was just done in February of 2025, showing that it was a study of 460 US women. So a small study. But of those women, like 30% were between the ages of 30 to 45. And then of the 30 to 35-year-olds, 25% were already experiencing perimenopausal symptoms. That's, yes.
No.
So, and it's because of what's happening out there in the world epigenetically, bombarding our endocrine systems, our hormones, our bodies that are shifting things earlier. So most 35 to 40, even 45. Most people say, oh, well, perimenopause, menopause starts at 52. Well, I'm seeing women in their mid 30s to early 40s that are a mess. And if they're an entrepreneur, they're even a bigger mess because they don't know how to balance their hormones and the stress that they're under, right? So they may need some bioidentical progesterone that feeds and supports their adrenals. Because when your adrenals are ramped up, ramping up cortisol, it sucks the progesterone right out of you, which is the calming, soothing, hormone, feminine hormone that's the mother of all hormones. Now your progesterone is going to plummet. Your testosterone and estrogen are going to plummet too. So it's critically important for women to support their progesterone because it also, will compensate or help compensate for the adrenal stress that we've put ourselves under. And again, regardless of the time of the month, women need to learn that every few hours that they need to reboot, right? When we produce a result, we make dopamine, and we are addicted to dopamine today, right? But we've got to get back and reinforce and raise up our other hormones, right? We need to get some oxytocin. It could just be, I'm going to hug myself for 2 minutes and take some deep abdominal breaths, right? I'm going to hug my child. I'm going to do some things, hug my puppy or something, and take care of ourselves. Men have been trained, and men do this naturally, to actually have a transition time between one activity to the next, between one accomplishment to the next. They have a transition time, and that transition time supports them. Well, our brains, a man's brain is single focused. He can just zone in. If you really want to see it in height, look at little boys, like they are just zoned in, right?
Yeah.
But we don't understand that we've got a completely different brain, chemistry. Our brains were marinated in estrogen, and we're designed to have this scan vision, right? So we can see children and the pot on the stove and handle this and handle that. Well, in the workforce, it's 10 screens are opening, we're handling the phone, we're doing this, we're doing that, and we're multitasking. We are the queens of multitaskers. And we often don't take time to transition. I have to teach women to transition from one thing to the next and give themselves and their nervous system and their hormones a reset.
Wow.
And there are tools. Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say, there are tools out there. There are essential oils. I've got this little device, which is from Heart Math, right, to support your HRV. And I've got the Pulsetta and these things because my physiology and my genetics require even more, right? But once you understand your body and what you need, then you have more power and control. And that's what biohacking is all about. And that's what epigenetics is all about, right? You understand your body, and then you get to control what else is going on. And you get to say, instead of being a sitting duck, right? And I had no idea what was going on. And Western medicine doesn't either.
It really is. It's such a powerful story because the idea, an entrepreneur would be very driven and enticed by the idea of being able to be in the driver's seat and controlling things, right?
Yes. Yes.
We've been brought up with this idea that, well, whatever I'm experiencing, let me just put in some phrases, that it's just normal, or you're aging, or you're just at a really stressful season. Like, these are maybe some of the phrases that you've heard a million times from your clients, whether they're entrepreneurs or not, right? But that's just a lot of the dialogue around women's health. And I remember joking I became really good friends with my OB when I was having babies, right? And he was saying the funniest part of my job is women come in and he's like, they're uncomfortable, their back hurts, they're exhausted, they're not sleeping well. And he's like, I could have a woman come in and she'd tell me she has pink and purple spots on her belly. And I would just say, the baby just needs to be born. It's normal. Like, everything feels just kind of normal. And whether or not that's true during pregnancy, that's conversation for another day. But as women, we're just often told, oh, you're over 40, you're kind of knocking on the door of menopause. It's normal. You're tired, like, yeah, belly weight, like, I know you're eating well, but it's just your body, you're aging, right? And so give me kind of a true, not true list of what is normal for a woman to experience as she ages versus, yeah, this is normal, but it's a sign that you can fix this. Like, you can go after this. Do you see what I'm saying? Is that
yes, absolutely. No, I've had 32-year-olds that, like, their life changed dramatically when you put on like 50 pounds in a matter of a couple months and your energy plummets. It's not because she was literally told, you're getting old at 32. This was an athlete. You're getting old. She was sent out the door with a pill for an ill. They never tested her for heavy metals or black mold toxicity or, this or that, an Epstein-Barr. Like, I found those, right? So with that said, there's a difference between what is normal. What's normal out there in the world, in our public, right? 75% are overweight. That's normal. That's what's normal. That is, or average. That is not what's optimal. That's not right. So I like to use the word optimal. So as we're aging, again, I mean, women may start having symptoms of, if you're having symptoms of brain fog and you're exhausted and you can't sleep and your libido is low, that is not normal. That is not healthy, normal aging. Like there is something going on hormonally. If you're skipping cycles, if you've got really heavy bleeding, that is not normal. Something is going on, right? Like all of that is going on and your body is too stressed. If you cannot think and can't focus and can't concentrate, or at 3:00 in the afternoon, your energy just plummets and you can't even think, there's something going on physiologically. Like you're not broken. There's something going on physiologically that needs to be addressed. And once you find that out and address it, you're like, oh, I feel like I've got myself back. Like, oh, I'm back. And that's wonderful. That's enlivening, right? Talk about vitality, right? It's like, oh, I can choose differently.
Well, and I imagine, I know enough about your work just personally and knowing many of your client results and those kinds of things to know that a lot of people come to you when things are bad. Like maybe there's been a life event. Hello, my mother passing away. So glad you reached out to me because I was drowning, right? Or a cancer diagnosis, or a sister or a parent gets a diagnosis, or a lab value comes back or something like that. I'm just going to be really blunt. Is it dangerous for people to wait until it's a big life event? Like, I bet you have a wish that people would just come to you when they start to feel a little off. Like, what's the dream for you?
Well, the dream for me, honestly, is that people came when they're 25 or 30. I share my book and I write about compound interest. We're taught in our 20s, if we're lucky, 20s and early 30s, you need to be saving and preparing for retirement. Well, we never apply that to our physiology. You're preparing for your retirement. What do you want your body to be able to do when you're 50 and 60 and 70 and 80 and 90? Like, I am preparing the exercise and the things that I do now and what I do for my physiology. I'm so grateful. And I said to my Pilates coach yesterday, I'm so grateful that I stuck with it, even when I was so sick, that I continued to help my body heal. So because I'm stronger now than a lot of men. I may not look buff, but I'm strong. And I'm preparing my body to do what I want to do when I'm 95. So there's that whole compound interest. And I would so prefer for someone to come at 30 years old and say, okay, let's check your DNA. Here's everything you've got control over. Here's your wiring, right? The wiring is just like the keys on a piano. Here's your wiring, right? And what you do, your diet, your lifestyle, your stress, your thoughts, the people you're in relationship with or not, all of those things are impacting your genes, and you've got control. And check some of their physiological tests, like a Dutch test or a microbiome. Now you've got control. Oh, and here's what you can do to biohack, right, your genetics so that you can function optimally in every area of your life, whether it's business and your brain and your energy and your sports and playing with your kids or your love life, whatever it is, you've got control. And then check in on it every year or every 5 years. We don't wait 5 to 10 or 15 years. Like, heaven help anyone that waits till they're 50 or they go bankrupt. They're in bankruptcy and go, maybe I should pay attention to my finances.
Right.
But we do that with our physiology. We ignore all the signs and we just ignore it instead of going, okay, where am I? What's going on? What can I control? What should I shift?
Ooh. So, blunt question for you.
Okay.
Has there ever been someone that you have not been able to help? They're too far gone.
Oh, yes.
Really?
Well, it all depends on willingness. If they're unwilling to address their addictions or their childhood wounds and do that healing work, no, I can't help them. I can give them some hormones or support their hormones or say, here's I can do a consultation. But if they're unwilling, if they've got a victim mentality and they refuse to take responsibility, then no, I can't help them. So I've met more than one. Yes.
And when you think, a follow up to that, when you think about the world that your nieces are growing up in and your grandchildren, and I know we're talking men and women, but specifically about those girls, what can we be doing as their mothers and grandmothers so that when they are 40, they aren't dismissed? And when they are 40, they are already living optimally and honoring their bodies. What can we do to set the stage for them?
That's a great question. And I think part of it comes back to how we're living, and they can see us. They can see the changes and the shifts that we're making personally. They can see us owning our power and owning our feminine power, our feminine energy. And they can see us doing our self-care and see how it's helping us to be more present. We cannot be great entrepreneurs, honestly, or in any role, right? Whether we're mom, boss. And again, I want to expand this a bit, not to just female entrepreneurs, but any high achieving woman, whether they're the mom boss at home, they're the CEO in their home, they've got 9 kids and they're homeschooling and they run a charity, and on and on and on. I've got women in my world that haven't worked professionally as an entrepreneur, but they are changing the world, right? Like profound, global foundations they've created. I mean, we're talking high achieving women. And when our daughters and granddaughters can see us owning our power and caring for our bodies, doing our self-care, doing our healing work, we're already shifting things. And fortunately, I think we're seeing things culturally shift slowly as well, right? And I love the freedom in the entrepreneurial space that we have to do that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm really blessed that my business, my life and lifestyle are not dependent upon my current income. Like I'm choosing this and I have the freedom to do this. And I know that when they set a deadline, every time we set a deadline, our cortisol levels go up. It demands more cortisol, right? Yeah. It demands a lot of yang energy. And we do that as entrepreneurs. We set deadlines, we set goals. And when we understand what it's doing to our physiology, then we can augment and support. And so I think if we are doing that and we teach our daughters and nieces and granddaughters to do that and to honor their cyclical nature, honor their feminine physiology, then it'll be dramatically different for them. And honestly, that's why I shifted. Early in my career, I was focused just on postmenopausal women. I'm like, they're screaming, they want my help right now.
Sure. It's the easy path.
And they've got the money to hire me, as a coach, right? And a consultation. Yep. And the more I see, the more passion I have for the younger perimenopausal woman. Like if I can save and get to someone who's 30 and 35 to 40 years old and completely dramatically shift their trajectory, then, oh my, it's so fulfilling and so wonderful.
And we're so aware of a woman is a ripple. How many times have we said that? If you can save the woman, you've saved a home. If you can save the woman, you've saved the community, the pew.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
We understand
so it's critically important for us, right, to be doing that. And again, it's not, I want to reinforce to the men that it's important for you as well. You're also, in need of caring for yourself. It's compound interest for you too.
So true. So true. Well, I would say that what you feel called to do is such a large mission, right? And can feel often like you're fighting against a Goliath, right? And as far as cultural norms and the direction maybe Western medicine has taken and all those things, I've got a really probably sensitive question for you that I would love to hear your soapbox a little bit on. Okay. What would you say are, 2 or 3 of the biggest disservices that are happening in the medical field that are pushing against women being well.
Yeah, I have a soapbox on that. I wrote a huge section in my book about the disparity with clinical trials, right?
Yes.
And how women are completely ignored because we do have a cycle. Well, for heaven's sakes, that's why we should be studied, because we're very, very different than men. We are not small men, right? And women are being gaslit and misdiagnosed, as I mentioned earlier. And well, in fact, I remember, and this is give credit to a different author who just released a big book on menopause. And the phrase that she was taught, or one of her attending physicians as she was going through her gynecology residency, said, "Oh, you mean you've just met a WWW?" And she said, "Well, what's that?" And she was like, "Well, a white, whiny woman."
Oh, no. Oh.
Yes, a white, whiny woman. And men don't understand that these are natural physiological things that are going on, and it's bred out of them when they're in medical school. I mean, in medical school, the physicians, I grew up in medicine from the time I was 14 working in hospitals. Like, I loved my medical colleagues, and I know that if I have a crisis, like, oh man, I'm heading straight to the ER, right? And be grateful for those that can save my life, like your husband. And they're not paying attention to, again, our body, mind, and spirit. And it's been bred out of them, right? To attention. They have to shut down. When you're working 120 hours a week and you're starving, well, women, as a female physician, right, you have to override your physiological needs. I had to override my physiological needs working 16-hour shifts and all through the night, right? You have to override them. So they're set up automatically, and they're not, they are given a protocol, an algorithm, and you better fit that algorithm, or too bad. There's something wrong in your head if you don't fit the algorithm, right? There's an algorithm, and they don't know what to do outside the algorithm. That's why I love functional medicine so much, is because we dig and drill and drill and drill and get down to the root cause, whether that's adverse child events or your genetics, or for heaven's sakes, the mold in your home, like I was exposed to for many years, right? So that's what I think is one of the biggest things that Western medicine still needs to overcome, is that our bodies are uniquely different, and we need to study them we need to study females with fervor. For years we ruled out the placebo. We just kind of discounted, oh, that's the placebo effect, right? Well, there's something magical about the placebo effect. Why don't we study that? People are healing their bodies with the power of their mind. Like, really? Why don't we dive in or study that? Why aren't we diving in and studying female physiology? Like, wait, this is what it looks like during these 2 weeks, and then these 2 weeks. And depending on our body size, this is how the drug is impacting our body size. Like, really? Like, we need to be digging in and looking at that. And if women are being discounted by their medical provider, they need to fire them and find a new one. They need to fire them. I had to fire mine, right? And the good news is there are people out there, and we live in the world of chat. You can at least get some basic physiological answers, right? Now, they may not be able to put it all together and connect all the dots like I can, right? But I think that's the biggest challenge, is that there's still silos, all these ologists, and we're not dealing with body, mind, and spirit, and we're not addressing female physiology.
Oh my goodness. And I think that this conversation matters, because I'm not trying to rag on Western medicine. I mean, I'm married to a doctor who I adore, and you adore, right?
Yes, absolutely.
The greatest husband ever. And I think that there has to be an awareness, and I firmly believe in someone's ability to advocate. And you don't know what to advocate for if you don't know what's normal and what's not normal, and the conditions that you're, right?
Exactly.
I felt blessed. My family practice doctor, who is a female, was a co-author with you as we were trying to find out the challenges that I was facing. And, we worked in tandem, right? And I'm recognizing more and more that it's more of a rare scenario, but it doesn't have to be a never scenario. Like, go out there and find people that can support you on your journey. I really, really believe that is possible for people. This
Well,
has been so, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to insert, and that's why I've literally been brought to tears as I've read the manuscript of my upcoming book, Biohacking Perimenopause, because I literally give women, these are the things you need to know. This is what you need to do to be your own advocate and find a provider who can answer these questions, right? Like how to interview a medical provider to see if they're going to be your partner and your advocate, right? Because women have no idea. I mean, physicians are just, they're not even addressing it.
Right.
They're not addressing it. If you're not 52 years old, well, you shouldn't be in perimenopause. You shouldn't be starting menopause. If you're not 47, you're not in perimenopause. Like baloney. Anyway.
Well, and then just imagine as an entrepreneur, right? Let's say you sell digital goods online or whatever, and you are thrown into a room with all the people that do, coding for Apple, right? It would be really hard to learn how to communicate with them on a professional level to get any kind of output. You just speak a different language, right? And it's not like when Greg went to med school, there was this whole like how to communicate anesthesia with the everyday person, right? Luckily, he was a communications major and he's actually really, really good at it, right? But like the norm is that the doctors can't answer questions that you aren't asking.
Exactly.
Right?
Precisely.
And so this is such a great part of your book. We'll make sure that we link everything below for people to be able to access that. And in fact, listeners, Lori has given you guys something that is so generous, right? I mean, buy all the books, do all the things. And I cannot push enough that you should either get on her wait list or book a consultation with her, right? I know we're recording this around the holidays, so availability may be limited, but the ability to get tested and just to start with her really is one of your first steps. For those of you who are not quite ready for that kind of commitment, she's got an incredible free biohacking guide for those of you who feel like I'm ready to kind of dip my toes in this and see what that looks like. We've put the link below, createthevitalityyoucrave.com/biohacking, all one word there. And you can go dive into her generosity there to get started. Lori, I cannot thank you enough. And I would say that the greatest gift that you have had, certainly on my life, but I hope that our listeners' lives as well, is you have just opened our eyes to what is possible, to what is real, and to live a life with hope, because you are that epitome of someone who was drowning at 42 with every genetic marking working against you, a mother that died early, a father that died from a heart attack, just tragic medical history. And you are now, in your 60s, living a life that was seemingly impossible. Would you say that's accurate?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Incredible.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for being the gift that you are through this conversation and in my life personally. In typical Unreasonable Autonomy fashion, I'd like to ask you a couple of just rapid fire questions to wrap up this conversation. And listeners, just make sure that you go and get all the resources below so that you can stay better connected with Lori. So Lori, are you ready?
I'm ready.
And it's going to be such a lovely question just because whatever reader you are, okay? What is one book that every single entrepreneur must read?
Oh, wow. I honestly, I want to go back to my childhood favorite, Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Life-changing. I love, I love The Big Leap and on and on and on. Like all these books, but I would start with Jonathan Livingston Seagull. I'm amazed at how many people that are much younger than me have never even heard of it. That's my recommendation.
Yeah. Wonderful. We'll make sure we also link that below for our listeners as well. For the second question, this one is a little bit more loaded.
Okay.
Do I dare ask this, Lori?
Of course.
Our listeners may not know that you recently got married. And I feel so lucky that I was able to be part of that wedding celebration. What have you learned about the nature of God because of this new marriage?
Excuse the tears, right? I was shocked and blown away, 3.5 years ago. And yet I was promised by my ecclesiastical leader that I would experience more joy and more love than I could possibly imagine. And I was in a very stressful, it turned out to be in the last few years, very abusive relationship. living a really lovely, lifestyle, but a really abusive relationship. And I remember reciting, reading over and over again and contemplating and pondering the promises of Job that are in the Bible, right? Everything was taken away, but I was promised, right, that I would experience more love and joy than I could possibly imagine. And I look back now and can see the hand of God in my life. Well, even to the point of me starting my business finally. At the age of 61, before I knew what was coming with the divorce, I had a strong prompting. It's time. You need to get your website up and you need to start doing this. And I'm writing my book and I'm in the middle of all of this when life crashed. And I stopped everything for 6 months. I had no idea that he was preparing me, right? So I see God's hand in my life over and over again. I see his hand in the promptings, not only the comfort that he gave me through that time that I was healing and alone, the specific prompting, his words specifically for the language that I needed in that exact moment. And I know that he was guiding me even to move from Tampa, Florida, back to Salt Lake City, Utah. But the miracle of me finding my partner within my beloved husband, my soulmate I'm shocked. Neither one of us were expecting what happened in our 60s. And neither one of us had any idea that you could be this happy. We're blown away at the goodness of God. Thank goodness for both of us. It was a miracle and a blessing that both of our spouses did what they did and betrayed us, right? And that we were past the opportunity to come together and create something really, really beautiful, like a beautiful partnership where we're supporting each other in every way. And we, magically clicked from the moment. To look back and see God's hand in bringing us together and all of the little things that God was preparing me, and I just kept listening and paying attention and having faith. And it was a wild ride. Let me tell you, digital dating in your 60s is just whoa, a wild ride and a lot of heartache. And thank goodness that all the others didn't work out, that I was, heartbroken over, that when I met Scott, it was this is who you've been preparing me for. So it's magical and wonderful. And we're in this time of enjoying our first holidays together and, being a Grammy again. And my Grammy heart is very happy. And it's amazing what, how your body heals physiologically when you're in an amazing, safe environment.
I cannot think of anyone more deserving, someone who has really just given so much of her effort and energy towards helping support and heal others, to see all of that be made manifest and you be made whole by you finding someone who supports and loves and cherishes you. It has been such a beautiful love story to witness. Just incredible. So another huge thank you to the amazing Lori Finlay for all of her efforts in helping us, women and men, be aware of ways in which we can feel well and experience vitality, regardless of medical history, regardless of our current status quo. I am just so grateful personally for your work and for your friendship. Thank you again so much for being a guest today on the podcast.
It was such a thrill. Thank you for having me. I'm really honored. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Unreasonable Autonomy podcast. If you loved this episode, my guests and I would love to hear about it. Go to the show notes to reach out and let me know what resonated with you or what topics or guests you want to hear in the future. I am here to create for you. Look, I deeply admire your commitment to pushing boundaries and going after an unreasonable life. Keep dreaming big, taking bold steps, and expecting the unreasonable. For more, go to the show notes to dive deeper into the conversations that will keep you going. Thanks for being here.